Detective Inspector Marcus Thompson had seen many strange cases during his 15 years with the Royal Protection Unit, but nothing quite prepared him for the call that came on that foggy Tuesday morning in November. The voice on the other end belonged to Chief Inspector Patricia Wells, her tone carrying the weight of urgency that only came with matters involving the Crown. "Marcus, we need you at the Gloucestershire estate immediately," she said, her words crisp and measured. "There's been a development regarding the missing items from the Queen's private collection." Thompson's mind raced back to the case that had consumed the unit for the past 8 months. Following the late Queen's passing, an inventory of her personal effects had revealed several priceless heirlooms missing from her private quarters at Windsor Castle. The missing items included a diamond tiara, dating back to Queen Victoria's reign, an emerald necklace gifted by the Russian Tsars, and most significantly, a small golden locket containing a photograph of the Queen's father, King George VI. The locket held immense sentimental value, far beyond its material worth. The investigation had led nowhere for months. Security footage showed nothing unusual, and all staff members had passed rigorous background checks. The items had simply vanished without a trace, leaving the royal family devastated and the protection unit baffled. As Thompson drove through the winding countryside roads toward Camilla's private estate, he reflected on how the case had taken this unexpected turn. An anonymous tip had come in the previous evening, claiming that suspicious activity had been observed at the property. The caller, speaking in hushed tones, mentioned seeing unusual lights in the estate's old servants' quarters late at night, and strange vehicles coming and going at odd hours. Thompson knew he had to tread carefully. Camilla, now Queen Consort, had been nothing but cooperative during the initial investigation. She had personally assisted with the inventory and had seemed genuinely shocked when the missing items were discovered. However, protocol demanded that every lead be followed. Regardless of how sensitive the circumstances might be, the estate loomed before him as he turned through the ornate iron gates. Built in the 18th century, the mansion stood like a testament to British aristocratic grandeur, its limestone facade gleaming despite the overcast sky. Thompson had visited the property once before during the initial investigation, but today it felt different somehow. Charged with an energy that made him grip the steering wheel a little tighter, he was met at the front entrance by Sergeant Diana Foster, a sharp-eyed investigator known for her meticulous attention to detail. Her expression told him immediately that this wasn't going to be a routine follow-up visit. "What do we have, Diana?" Thompson asked, as they walked toward the main house. "The estate manager, Mr. Harold Whitfield, contacted us this morning," Foster explained, consulting her notepad. He was conducting his weekly inspection of the property when he noticed that the lock on the old servants' quarters had been tampered with. When he investigated further, he discovered signs that someone had been using the space recently. Thompson nodded, his investigator instincts already firing. The servants' quarters had been converted into storage space decades ago and were rarely accessed. If someone was indeed using them secretly, it raised immediate red flags. "Has anyone spoken to the Queen Consort?" Thompson inquired. "She's currently in London for official engagements," Foster replied. "Mr. Whitfield has tried to reach her, but we thought it best to investigate first before involving her directly." As they approached the servants' quarters, located in a separate wing of the estate, Thompson noticed the building's isolated position. Surrounded by mature oak trees and hidden from the main house's view, it would be the perfect location for clandestine activities. The heavy wooden door showed clear signs of recent use. While the original lock remained intact, scratch marks around the keyhole suggested someone had been picking it regularly. Foster produced a set of master keys provided by Whitfield, and they entered the dimly lit corridor. The musty smell of old wood and forgotten memories filled Thompson's nostrils as they made their way through the narrow hallway. Dust particles danced in the weak sunlight filtering through grimy windows. But it was immediately apparent that this space hadn't been as abandoned as everyone believed. Foster pointed to the floor. "Look at these footprints in the dust. Multiple sets. And they're recent." Thompson crouched down, examining the patterns. At least 3 different shoe sizes were represented, suggesting multiple people had been accessing this area. More concerning was the path the footprints created, leading deeper into the building toward what appeared to be a large storage room at the far end. As they followed the trail, Thompson's radio crackled to life. "Inspector Thompson. This is Constable Richards. I'm conducting a perimeter check as requested, and I've found something you need to see immediately." "What is it, Richards?" Thompson responded. "There's a concealed entrance to an underground passage behind the building. It looks like it's been used recently, and there are tire tracks leading to it from the main road." Thompson and Foster exchanged glances. Underground passages weren't uncommon in estates of this age, often built as escape routes during times of political upheaval. But their existence was usually well documented. The fact that this one appeared to be unknown to the current residents was deeply troubling. "Secure the area, Richards. We're coming to you," Thompson instructed. As they made their way back outside, Foster voiced what Thompson was already thinking. If someone has been using this estate as a base of operations, they would have needed inside knowledge of the property's layout and security procedures. The implications were staggering. The investigation had always focused on external threats, but the evidence was increasingly pointing towards someone with intimate knowledge of royal properties and procedures. The thought that the thefts might be an inside job sent a chill down Thompson's spine. Behind the servants' quarters, Constable Richards stood beside what appeared to be nothing more than an overgrown hillside. Upon closer inspection, however, Thompson could see the clever camouflage that concealed a metal door built into the earth. Recent disturbance in the vegetation around the entrance was evident, and fresh tire tracks led from a maintenance path that connected to the public road nearly a quarter-mile away. "Has anyone been down there yet?" Thompson asked. "No, sir. We waited for your arrival," Richards replied. "But I did notice something else. There are security cameras positioned at various points along this path, but they're not connected to the estate's main security system." This revelation added another layer of sophistication to whatever operation was being conducted. Someone had not only discovered and utilized the underground passage but had also installed their own surveillance network to monitor access. Thompson made the decision to proceed with the investigation immediately. Time was of the essence, especially if the perpetrators realized their operation had been discovered. He called for additional backup and specialized equipment, knowing that whatever lay beneath the estate could provide the answers they had been seeking for months. As the team prepared to enter the underground passage, Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something much larger than a simple theft. The level of planning and execution required for this operation suggested they were dealing with professionals, possibly with connections that reached into the highest levels of society. The metal door opened with surprising ease, revealing a well-maintained corridor that extended into darkness. Emergency lighting had been installed along the walls, and the air felt fresh, indicating a ventilation system was in operation. This was no abandoned tunnel left over from centuries past, but a fully functional underground facility. Foster switched on her high-powered flashlight as they began their descent. The passage was wider than expected, easily accommodating two people walking side by side. The walls were lined with modern electrical conduits, and Thompson noticed several branching corridors leading off in different directions. "This is incredibly sophisticated," Foster whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "Someone has invested serious money and time into this operation." However, rounding someone was action 5. However, Thompson nodded grimly. With each step, the magnitude of what they were discovering became more apparent. This wasn't a simple hiding place for stolen goods, but an elaborate underground complex that could have been years in the making. As they progressed deeper into the tunnel system, Thompson's radio reception began to fade, cutting them off from the surface team. The isolation added an edge of tension to their investigation, but turning back wasn't an option. Somewhere in this underground maze lay the answers to the most significant theft in recent royal history. The corridor eventually opened into a larger chamber, and what Thompson saw there would change the entire direction of their investigation. The space had been converted into a sophisticated operations center, complete with computer equipment, communication devices, and detailed floor plans of various royal residences spread across multiple tables. But it was what hung on the far wall that truly took Thompson's breath away. In carefully organized display cases, illuminated by professional museum-quality lighting, were not just the missing heirlooms from the Queen's collection, but dozens of other priceless artifacts that appeared to span centuries of royal history. The diamond tiara sat prominently in the center display, its gems catching the light and throwing prismatic rainbows across the chamber walls. Beside it, the emerald necklace lay coiled like a green serpent, its stones gleaming with an inner fire. But it was the small golden locket, positioned in a place of honor, that confirmed Thompson's worst fears. This was no random theft committed by opportunistic criminals. The organization and scope of the operation suggested something far more sinister. A systematic looting of royal artifacts that could have been ongoing for years, possibly decades. Foster moved toward one of the computer terminals, which displayed what appeared to be detailed security schedules for multiple royal residences. "Marcus, you need to see this," she called softly. The information on the screen revealed an intricate knowledge of royal family movements, security rotations, and even personal schedules of family members. The level of detail was far beyond what any outsider could have obtained, confirming Thompson's growing suspicion that this operation involved someone with high-level access to royal household information. As they documented the scene with their cameras, Thompson noticed a partially open door leading to yet another chamber. Inside, they discovered what appeared to be a workshop area, complete with tools for authentication, cleaning, and possibly even forgery of antique items. The scope of the operation was breathtaking. This wasn't just about stealing royal heirlooms. It appeared to be an elaborate network involved in the trafficking of historical artifacts on an international scale. Thompson's mind raced as he tried to process the implications. How long had this been going on? How many items had been stolen and sold before they had discovered this operation? Most importantly, who was behind it? And how high up did their connections reach? As they continued their investigation of the underground facility, Thompson knew that they had stumbled onto something that would rock the very foundations of the royal household. The missing heirlooms were just the beginning of a mystery that threatened to expose vulnerabilities in the crown's security that no one had imagined possible. The investigation was about to take on a scope and urgency that would challenge everything Thompson thought he knew about protecting the royal family and their priceless heritage. Detective Inspector Marcus Thompson stood in the underground chamber, his mind working to piece together the massive operation they had uncovered. The sophisticated setup before him represented months, possibly years of careful planning. As he photographed the evidence, his radio finally picked up a weak signal from the surface. "Inspector Thompson, this is Chief Inspector Wells. What's your status?" The voice crackled through the static. "Chief, we've found them. The missing heirlooms and much more. We're going to need the full forensics team down here. And I suggest you contact the palace security immediately. This is bigger than we initially thought." The silence on the other end told Thompson that Wells understood the gravity of the situation. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of someone realizing that a carefully constructed security system had been compromised at the highest levels. "Thompson, I'm sending additional units to secure the perimeter. Don't touch anything else until forensics arrives. We need this scene preserved exactly as you found it." As Thompson waited for the forensics team, he and Foster continued their careful examination of the facility. The deeper they ventured into the complex, the more sophisticated it became. They discovered multiple storage rooms, each climate-controlled and equipped with security systems that would rival any museum. In one room, they found detailed photographs and documentation of hundreds of royal artifacts, some dating back centuries. The files were meticulously organized, suggesting this operation had been cataloging royal collections for an extended period. Most disturbing was a section labeled "Current Opportunities," which contained detailed plans for future acquisitions. Foster discovered a communication center equipped with encrypted satellite phones and computer systems that appeared to connect to networks around the world. "Marcus, this looks like they were coordinating with international buyers. There are contact lists here for private collectors, auction houses, and what appear to be black market dealers across Europe and Asia." The implications were staggering. The theft of the Queen's heirlooms wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a vast network trafficking in royal and historical artifacts. Thompson realized they had stumbled upon an operation that could span multiple countries and involve players at the highest levels of society. As the forensics team began their painstaking work, Thompson made his way back to the main display chamber. The sight of the Queen's personal locket, with its photograph of her beloved father, reminded him of the human cost of this betrayal. These weren't just valuable objects. They were pieces of history and personal memory that could never be truly replaced. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the lead forensics expert, approached Thompson with her preliminary findings. Inspector, the sophistication of this operation is remarkable. The security systems, the environmental controls, even the way the artifacts are displayed, suggests someone with extensive knowledge of museum and archive preservation techniques. Thompson nodded, his thoughts already turning to the question that had been bothering him since they first entered the facility. Dr. Mitchell, in your professional opinion, how long would it have taken to construct something like this? Given the extent of the excavation, the installation of electrical systems, ventilation, and security equipment, I'd estimate at least 2 years, possibly 3. This wasn't a quick operation. Someone had long-term access to this property and significant resources to invest in the construction. The timeline was troubling. Construction of this magnitude would have required permits, contractors, and suppliers. The fact that it had gone undetected suggested either incredible skill in concealment or the involvement of people who could ensure that awkward questions weren't asked. Sergeant Foster approached with a tablet containing photographs of documents they had discovered. Thompson, you need to see these financial records. There are bank transfers here totaling millions of pounds, with payments coming from accounts in Switzerland, Monaco, and the Cayman Islands. Thompson studied the financial documents, his investigator's mind working to understand the scope of the operation. The sums involved were far beyond what simple theft of royal artifacts could generate. This suggested a highly organized criminal network with international reach and substantial financial backing. Have we been able to trace any of these accounts? Thompson asked. Not yet, but the Financial Crimes Unit is already working on it. What's interesting is that several of these payments correspond to dates when other high-profile thefts occurred across Europe. There was that break-in at the Louvre storage facility last year, and the missing artifacts from the Vatican's private collection. The connection to international art theft added another dimension to the investigation. Thompson began to see a pattern emerging of a sophisticated network that specialized in acquiring and trafficking the world's most precious cultural artifacts. As the investigation continued, Thompson received an urgent call from Chief Inspector Wells. Thompson, we've just received word from Palace Security. The Queen Consort is returning to the estate this afternoon. She's been informed of the situation and is cooperating fully, but we need to expedite our investigation. Thompson understood the delicate nature of the situation. While there was no evidence suggesting Camilla's involvement, the fact that this operation had been conducted on her property would undoubtedly raise questions. The investigation would need to be thorough while remaining sensitive to the political implications. Dr. Mitchell's team had begun the careful process of documenting and removing the stolen artifacts. Each item was photographed in place before being carefully packaged for transport back to secure facilities where they could be properly examined and authenticated. As Thompson watched the Queen's locket being carefully placed in a preservation container, he reflected on the years of grief its absence must have caused the royal family. The locket represented more than just monetary value. It was a connection to memory and family history that no amount of money could replace. Foster approached with another discovery that would further complicate the investigation. Thompson, we've found personal correspondence in one of the office areas, letters discussing the movement of specific items. And they're signed with initials that match several people who have had access to royal residences. Thompson took the letters, his heart sinking as he read the implications. The correspondence suggested that the theft operation had inside assistance from people with legitimate access to royal properties. The betrayal of trust ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Foster, I want these letters analyzed immediately. Handwriting analysis, paper forensics, everything. And get me a complete list of everyone who has had access to the royal residences where thefts have occurred. As the afternoon progressed, the full scope of the operation continued to unfold. The underground facility contained detailed floor plans of nearly every significant royal residence, including security patrol routes, camera locations, and even the personal schedules of royal family members. Thompson realized that whoever was behind this operation had been planning for years, possibly decades. The level of inside information required suggested corruption at levels that would shake the very foundations of royal security. The discovery of a hidden office area revealed even more disturbing evidence. Computer files contained detailed psychological profiles of royal family members, their habits, preferences, and routines. The invasion of privacy was as shocking as the theft itself. Dr. Mitchell called Thompson over to examine what appeared to be a workshop area where authentic historical documents had been forged. "Inspector, this equipment could produce museum-quality reproductions of historical documents. It's possible that some of the items in the royal collections have been replaced with forgeries without anyone knowing." The implications were staggering. If authentic artifacts had been systematically replaced with forgeries over the years, the true scope of the theft could be far greater than anyone had imagined. Thompson made a mental note to recommend comprehensive authentication reviews of all major royal collections. As the day wore on, the investigation team uncovered evidence of the operation's international reach. Communication logs showed regular contact with individuals in at least 12 countries, suggesting a network of unprecedented scope and sophistication. Thompson's radio crackled with an update from the surface team. "Inspector, we have vehicles approaching the estate. The Queen Consort's security detail has arrived, and she'll be here within the hour." The timing added pressure to an already complex situation. Thompson knew that Camilla's arrival would bring additional scrutiny and political sensitivity to the investigation. Every piece of evidence would need to be documented and secured before the estate became the center of media attention. Foster approached with a final discovery that would provide the key to unraveling the entire operation. Hidden in a concealed safe, they had found detailed records of sales and transfers of stolen artifacts dating back over 20 years. The documents included photographs of items, sale prices, and buyer information for hundreds of pieces. Thompson, according to these records, this operation has been selling royal and historical artifacts for over 2 decades. The total value of stolen items could be in the hundreds of millions of pounds. Thompson studied the documents, his mind racing to comprehend the full magnitude of what they had discovered. This wasn't just the largest theft in royal history. It was potentially one of the largest art theft operations ever uncovered. As the forensics team completed their initial documentation of the scene, Thompson prepared for the challenging task of briefing the Queen Consort on what they had discovered on her property. The investigation had revealed a betrayal of trust that reached into the highest levels of royal household staff and security. The missing heirlooms were just the visible tip of an iceberg that threatened to expose decades of systematic theft and corruption. Thompson knew that the difficult work of identifying those responsible was just beginning, and that the investigation would test the very foundations of trust within the royal household. As he prepared to leave the underground facility, Thompson took one last look around the sophisticated operation that had operated in secret for so long. The recovery of the Queen's missing heirlooms was just the beginning of what promised to be the most complex and sensitive investigation of his career. 3 weeks after the discovery at Camilla's estate, Detective Inspector Marcus Thompson sat in the secure briefing room at Scotland Yard, surrounded by evidence that would reshape understanding of royal security for generations to come. The investigation had expanded far beyond the recovery of the Queen's missing heirlooms, uncovering a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of British society. The forensics analysis had revealed shocking truths about the scope and duration of the theft operation. Carbon dating and materials analysis confirmed that some of the stolen artifacts in the underground facility dated back to thefts that had occurred over 25 years ago. The operation had been active far longer than anyone had imagined. Chief Inspector Patricia Wells entered the room carrying a thick folder of new evidence. Her expression reflected the gravity of what the investigation had uncovered in recent weeks. "Thompson, the Financial Crimes Unit has completed their analysis of the banking records. The money trail leads to some very prominent names." Thompson accepted the folder, his stomach tightening as he read through the list of individuals connected to the financial network. The names included several members of the aristocracy, prominent art dealers, and most shocking of all, 2 individuals who had held senior positions within the royal household security apparatus. "How solid is this evidence?" Thompson asked, knowing that accusations of this magnitude would require absolute certainty. "Rock solid. We have bank transfers, communication records, and in several cases, direct testimony from arrested accomplices. The Crown Prosecution Service believes we have enough evidence to proceed with charges against 14 individuals, including the 2 former security officials." The betrayal represented by the involvement of trusted security personnel was perhaps the most devastating aspect of the entire investigation. These were individuals who had sworn oaths to protect the royal family and their heritage, yet had systematically violated that trust for personal profit. Thompson's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the forensics expert who had been coordinating the authentication of recovered artifacts. Her message was brief but significant. "Thompson, we need to meet immediately. The authentication results have revealed something extraordinary." An hour later, Thompson met Dr. Mitchell at the secure storage facility where the recovered artifacts were being held. The Queen's heirlooms had been returned to the royal family with great ceremony the previous week, but many other items remained under investigation to determine their rightful owners. "Inspector, what I'm about to show you will astound you," Dr. Mitchell said, as she led him to a special examination room. "We've discovered that several artifacts we assumed were stolen were actually discovered artifacts that had been lost for decades. Some for over a century." She gestured to a display case containing an ornate golden chalice encrusted with precious stones. "This piece was recorded as lost during World War II, when Buckingham Palace was bombed. We assumed it had been destroyed. Instead, it appears to have been secretly recovered and held by this criminal network for over 80 years. Thompson stared at the chalice, understanding the implications. The theft network hadn't just been stealing contemporary artifacts. They had been hoarding historical treasures that the royal family and the nation had assumed were lost forever. Dr. Mitchell continued, "We've identified at least 30 pieces that fall into this category. Items that were presumed destroyed or lost during wartime, natural disasters, or simple misplacement over the decades. This criminal network appears to have been systematically acquiring and holding these pieces, possibly waiting for the right moment to sell them or using them as leverage in some larger scheme." The revelation added yet another dimension to an already complex case. The recovery operation had not only solved recent thefts, but had also returned pieces of British heritage that had been considered lost to history. Thompson's radio interrupted their discussion with an urgent message from Sergeant Foster. "Inspector, we've just received word that the international aspects of this case have led to arrests in 6 different countries. Interpol is coordinating simultaneous raids on connected operations across Europe." The international scope of the arrests confirmed what Thompson had suspected from the beginning. They had uncovered a sophisticated criminal network with global reach. The underground facility at Camilla's estate had been just one node in a much larger operation that trafficked stolen cultural artifacts worldwide. Back at Scotland Yard, Thompson reviewed the final investigative reports with Chief Inspector Wells. The scale of the operation they had uncovered was unprecedented in modern criminal history. Over 200 artifacts had been recovered from various locations, with a combined estimated value exceeding £500 million. "Thompson, the Home Secretary wants a complete briefing on security recommendations," Wells informed him. "This investigation has exposed vulnerabilities in royal security that need to be addressed immediately." Thompson had been preparing comprehensive recommendations for weeks. The investigation had revealed that the existing security protocols, while extensive, had failed to account for the possibility of long-term infiltration by sophisticated criminal organizations. His recommendations included enhanced background screening for all personnel with access to royal properties, regular security audits of historical collections, and the implementation of new tracking technologies for high-value artifacts. The human cost of the investigation was perhaps the most sobering aspect of the entire case. 3 longtime royal household employees had been arrested, including a security coordinator who had served the royal family for over 15 years. The betrayal of trust had shaken the confidence of the royal family and their staff. Thompson received a personal request to attend a private meeting at Buckingham Palace, where he would present the recovered items to senior members of the royal family. The invitation was both an honor and a reminder of the personal impact the thefts had had on the family. The day of the presentation, Thompson carefully transported the Queen's personal locket and other recovered heirlooms to Buckingham Palace. As he entered the private audience chamber, he was struck by the weight of history surrounding him. These weren't just valuable objects. They were tangible connections to generations of British history and royal heritage. King Charles received the items with visible emotion, particularly when Thompson presented the golden locket containing the photograph of King George VI. The personal significance of the item transcended its monetary value, representing a connection to family memory that had been thought lost forever. "Inspector Thompson," the king said solemnly, "your investigation has not only recovered precious artifacts, but has also restored pieces of our family's history that we feared were gone forever. The nation owes you a debt of gratitude." Thompson felt the weight of responsibility as he considered the broader implications of the investigation. The criminal network they had uncovered had not just stolen objects. They had attempted to steal pieces of British heritage that belonged to the entire nation. In the weeks that followed, the trials of those arrested in connection with the theft network began. The evidence gathered during the investigation proved overwhelming, and one by one, the conspirators pleaded guilty or were convicted of their crimes. The two former royal security officials received the longest sentences, with the judge noting that their betrayal of trust represented a particularly serious form of treason. The masterminds behind the international network received sentences that would ensure they spent the remainder of their lives in prison. Thompson's final report on the investigation ran to over 800 pages, detailing not just the specific crimes that had been committed, but also the systematic vulnerabilities that had allowed such an operation to succeed for so long. The report became a blueprint for enhanced security measures that would protect royal collections and other national treasures for future generations. 6 months after the initial discovery at Camilla's estate, Thompson stood once again in the countryside, but this time at a ceremony celebrating the reopening of a secure exhibition featuring some of the recovered artifacts. The pieces would now be displayed for the public, allowing the nation to see treasures that had been hidden away by criminals for decades. As he watched families and children marvel at the historical artifacts, Thompson reflected on the true victory of the investigation. It wasn't just about catching criminals or recovering valuable objects. It was about preserving the cultural heritage that belonged to everyone. The Queen's locket, now safely returned to the royal family, had served as the key that unlocked a vast criminal conspiracy. But more importantly, it had reminded everyone involved of the human stories behind historical artifacts and the responsibility to protect them for future generations. Thompson's investigation had not just solved the mystery of the missing royal heirlooms. It had exposed and dismantled one of the most sophisticated art theft networks in modern history. The case would be studied by law enforcement agencies worldwide as an example of how patience, thorough investigation, and international cooperation could triumph over even the most elaborate criminal schemes. The legacy of the investigation extended far beyond the specific crimes that were solved. New security protocols developed as a result of Thompson's recommendations were implemented not just for royal properties, but for museums, galleries, and cultural institutions throughout the United Kingdom and beyond. As Thompson concluded his involvement in the case, he knew that the discovery at Camilla's estate would be remembered as a turning point in the protection of cultural heritage. The investigation had proven that no criminal organization, regardless of how sophisticated or well-connected, was beyond the reach of determined law enforcement. The missing heirlooms had been returned, justice had been served, and most importantly, pieces of British history that had been thought lost forever were now preserved for future generations to appreciate and study. The case stood as a testament to the importance of protecting cultural heritage and the dedication of those who work to preserve it against those who would exploit it for personal gain.